The dust-laden wind carried the distant cries of a child across the rugged plains of Kansas Territory as Abigail Sutton's wagon rolled to a stop on the outskirts of Great Bend in the summer of 1868. Her hands trembled as she slumped against the wagon seat, fever ravaging her body, while her 5-year-old son Henry clutched her arm, tears streaming down his dirt-smudged face. "Please, Mama, wake up," Henry pleaded, shaking her shoulder gently. The wagon had broken down just a mile from town, and Abigail had collapsed while trying to repair the wheel. Her journey west after losing her husband to typhoid fever back in Missouri had been fraught with hardship, but she had pressed on with stubborn determination, hoping to reach her cousin's homestead near Great Bend. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made Henry turn his head. A tall figure on horseback emerged from the shimmering heat waves that danced across the prairie. The boy's eyes widened as the rider approached a broad-shouldered man with a weather-beaten face beneath a wide-brimmed hat. "Help us, mister," Henry called out, his voice cracking. "My mama can't move." The rider dismounted in one fluid motion, dust swirling around his worn leather boots as he approached the wagon. His keen blue eyes took in the situation at a glance: the broken wheel, the unconscious woman, and the frightened child. "My name's Adam Keller," he said, his voice low and steady as he removed his hat. "What's yours, boy?" "Henry. Henry Sutton, sir," the child replied, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. "My mama's sick. We were heading to Great Bend to find my cousin Sarah, but the wheel broke, and now Mama won't wake up." Adam climbed onto the wagon and pressed his calloused hand against Abigail's forehead, feeling the dangerous heat of fever. Her chestnut hair was damp with sweat, her breathing shallow. She was a handsome woman despite her current state, with fine features and long lashes that rested against her flushed cheeks. "She's burning up," Adam said, his brow furrowed with concern. He looked at the boy, who stood trembling with fear. "How long has she been like this?" "Since this morning," Henry replied. "She said we'd make it to town before sundown, but then the wheel broke, and she tried to fix it, but she fell and won't get up." Adam nodded, making a swift decision. "I'm going to take you both to town. Dr. Jenkins can help your mama, and we'll sort out finding your cousin later." He turned to the frightened boy and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "She'll be all right, son. She'll move when she hears your voice again." With gentle efficiency, Adam lifted Abigail's limp form from the wagon and carried her to his horse. He secured her in the saddle, then returned for Henry and their essential belongings. After tethering the wagon to a nearby tree, he mounted his horse behind Abigail, keeping her steady with one arm while holding the reins with the other. "Hold on to the saddlebag, Henry," Adam instructed as they started toward town. "Tell me about your journey. Where did you come from?" As they rode, Henry explained how they had left their home in Springfield, Missouri 3 weeks ago after his father died. Abigail had sold everything to finance their journey west, hoping to start anew with her cousin Sarah, who had written about the opportunities in the growing settlement of Great Bend. The town appeared on the horizon, a collection of wooden buildings and tents along the Arkansas River. Great Bend was still in its infancy, established just a year prior as a trading post and supply center for settlers and soldiers at nearby Fort Zara. The railroad would eventually come through, but for now it remained a frontier outpost on the edge of civilization. Adam rode directly to Dr. Jenkins' house on the eastern edge of town. The doctor, an older man with spectacles and a neatly trimmed white beard, answered the door quickly when Adam called out. "Fever," Adam explained tersely as he carried Abigail into the doctor's examining room. "Found them on the prairie. Wagon broke down. The boy says they've been traveling from Missouri." Dr. Jenkins immediately set to work examining Abigail while Adam helped Henry get settled in a chair near his mother's bedside. "Exhaustion and severe dehydration," the doctor pronounced. coupled with what appears to be a nasty infection. She's been pushing herself too hard. He glanced at Henry, who watched with wide, worried eyes. "What's your mama's name, son?" "Abigail Sutton," Henry whispered. "Is she going to die like Papa did?" The doctor exchanged a glance with Adam before addressing the boy directly. "Not if I have anything to say about it. Your mama is strong, I can tell that much already. But she needs rest and medicine." As the doctor prepared a tincture for Abigail, Adam crouched beside Henry. "I'm going to go back for your wagon. Get it fixed up. Is there anything special in there you need tonight?" Henry nodded solemnly. "Mama's wooden box. It has Papa's picture and her special brooch. And my wooden horse that Papa made. I'll bring them back," Adam promised. He turned to the doctor. "I know Sarah Jenkins, she runs the boarding house on Front Street. Any relation?" "My niece," the doctor confirmed. "I'll send word to her about her cousin's arrival." Adam nodded and rose to his feet. He looked down at Abigail's still form one last time before heading to the door. There was something about this woman and her boy that stirred something inside him, something he thought had died 3 years ago during the war. "Mr. Keller?" Henry called after him. "You'll come back, won't you?" Adam turned, surprised by the question and the boy's perceptiveness. "Yes, Henry. I'll come back." True to his word, Adam returned that evening with the repaired wagon and the items Henry had requested. Sarah Jenkins had already arrived at her uncle's house and was sitting with Henry, her face drawn with concern for her cousin. "I can't thank you enough, Mr. Keller," Sarah said as Adam placed the wooden box and toy horse on a side table. "If you hadn't found them when you did." Adam shook his head. "Just happened to be riding that way." "How is Mrs. Sutton doing?" "Uncle says the fever has to break on its own," Sarah replied. "Henry's been talking to her, but she hasn't responded yet." Adam looked at the boy, who sat beside his mother's bed, clutching his wooden horse and speaking in soft tones. The sight tugged at something deep within his chest. He'd seen too much death during the war, lost too much. His own wife, Emily, had died of cholera while he was away fighting, leaving him hollow and rootless upon his return. For 3 years, he'd drifted westward, taking odd jobs and keeping to himself. Now, as sheriff of Great Bend, he had responsibilities but few personal connections. "I'll check in tomorrow," Adam said, placing his hat back on his head. "The boy and his mother are welcome to stay at my place once she's well enough to move. It's not much, but it's clean and quiet." Sarah raised an eyebrow at the unexpected offer. "That's generous of you, Sheriff." Adam shrugged. "Just being neighborly." But as he left the doctor's house, he knew it was more than that. Something about Abigail Sutton and her brave young son had awakened feelings he'd thought long buried beneath the dust of lonely trails and bitter memories. The following morning, Adam returned to find Dr. Jenkins looking more optimistic. "The fever broke during the night," he reported. "She's still very weak, but she responded to Henry's voice earlier. She's sleeping naturally now." Adam felt an unexpected surge of relief. "That's good news." "Indeed," the doctor agreed. "Though she'll need time to recover fully. Sarah's arranged for them to stay at the boarding house once Abigail can be moved." Adam nodded, though a part of him felt oddly disappointed. "I should get back to my duties. Please let me know if they need anything else." For 3 days, Adam found reasons to stop by the doctor's house, bringing small gifts for Henry, a whittled wooden figure, a book of adventure stories, fresh-baked cookies from the town bakery. On the 4th day, he arrived to find Henry sitting on the front porch steps, his face brighter than it had been since their first meeting. "Sheriff Keller," the boy exclaimed, jumping to his feet. "Mama's awake and talking. She wants to meet you and say thank you." Adam felt suddenly self-conscious as he followed Henry inside. In the small bedroom, Abigail Sutton was propped up against pillows, her chestnut hair brushed and braided, her face still pale but alert, her eyes a striking shade of green fixed on him as he entered, and Adam felt an unexpected jolt in his chest. "Sheriff Keller," she said, her voice soft but clear, "I understand I owe you my life, and my son's as well." Adam removed his hat, uncomfortable with the gratitude in her eyes. "Anyone would have done the same, madam." "Perhaps," Abigail replied, "but it was you who did. Henry hasn't stopped talking about you." Her smile was warm, transforming her face despite her illness. "He tells me you promised I would move when I heard his voice again." "Children need hope," Adam said simply. "And he's a brave boy." Their conversation was brief, as Dr. Jenkins insisted that Abigail needed rest, but Adam left feeling strangely elevated. For the first time in years, he found himself looking forward to something, or rather, to seeing someone again. The next 2 weeks established a pattern. Adam would finish his sheriff duties and then visit the boarding house where Abigail and Henry had moved. At first, he claimed he was just checking on their welfare as part of his responsibilities to the town. But soon, even he couldn't maintain that pretense. Abigail regained her strength gradually. She and Henry had a small room at the boarding house, and Sarah helped her find work sewing for some of the wealthier families in town. Abigail had been a skilled seamstress back in Missouri, and her nimble fingers and eye for detail quickly earned her a reputation in Great Bend. As summer deepened, Adam found himself sharing more of his past with Abigail during their evening conversations on the boarding house porch. He told her about growing up in Ohio, about joining the Union Army despite his father's objections, about receiving the letter telling him of Emily's death while he was entrenched outside Petersburg. "I came west afterward," he explained one evening as they watched Henry playing with the doctor's dog in the yard. "Couldn't face going home to an empty house filled with memories." Abigail's hand briefly touched his arm, the contact sending a warm current through him. "I understand that feeling all too well," she said. "After James died, every corner of our home seemed to hold his ghost." The journey west was as much about outrunning grief as it was about finding new opportunities. Their shared experiences of loss created a bond that deepened with each conversation. Adam found himself looking forward to their talks, to her insights and quiet strength. He admired the way she was rebuilding her life for Henry's sake, refusing to be defined by tragedy. One afternoon in late August, Adam invited Abigail and Henry to join him for a picnic by the Arkansas River. The day was perfect, clear blue skies, a gentle breeze, and the river flowing peacefully beside them. Henry ran along the banks, collecting interesting stones and chasing butterflies while Adam and Abigail spread a blanket under a cottonwood tree. "This is the first time I've relaxed since leaving Missouri," Abigail confessed as she watched Henry play. Every day was about surviving, about reaching the next milestone. She turned to Adam, her green eyes reflecting the dappled sunlight. "Thank you for that gift." Adam found himself reaching for her hand before he could think better of it. "Abigail," he began, then hesitated, searching for the right words. "These past weeks, spending time with you and Henry, it's meant more to me than I can say." A blush colored her cheeks, but she didn't withdraw her hand. "It's meant a great deal to us as well." Their quiet moment was interrupted by Henry's excited shout. He came running back, clutching something in his hands. "Look what I found, Mama. It's a frog." The spell broken, they both laughed as Henry proudly displayed his amphibian discovery. The afternoon continued with shared stories and simple pleasures, but something had shifted between them. An unspoken acknowledgement of deeper feelings hung in the air, both exciting and frightening in its potential. As summer gave way to autumn, Great Bend buzzed with activity. The railroad surveyors had arrived, confirming that the town would indeed be on the line when construction reached them the following year. New businesses opened, and more settlers arrived each week. Abigail's sewing business flourished to the point where she was able to rent a small cottage on the edge of town, giving her and Henry their own space at last. Adam helped them move in, bringing furniture. He built himself a sturdy dining table with 4 chairs, a bookshelf for Henry's growing collection of books, and a rocking chair for the porch. The day they moved in, Abigail prepared a special dinner to thank him, and for the first time, the 3 of them felt like a family gathered around a table. After Henry went to bed, Adam and Abigail sat on the porch in the cool evening air, the stars emerging one by one above them. "I never expected to find this again," Adam said softly, watching the fireflies dance in the gathering darkness. A sense of belonging, of home. Abigail's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his own. "Nor did I," she admitted. "After James died, I thought that chapter of my life was closed forever." She turned to face him, her expression earnest in the fading light. "But then you found us on the prairie, and everything changed." Adam's heart hammered in his chest as he leaned closer. "Abigail," he whispered, "I think I'm falling in love with you." Her smile was radiant as she closed the distance between them. "I think I fell in love with you weeks ago," she confessed just before their lips met in a tender, hesitant kiss. That kiss marked a beginning, but their path forward wasn't without obstacles. Adam's position as sheriff exposed him to dangers that worried Abigail, especially as tensions occasionally flared between settlers and the indigenous tribes who had been displaced from their traditional lands. Meanwhile, Abigail struggled with the fear of loving again, of risking another devastating loss. In October, word reached Great Bend that a band of outlaws had been terrorizing homesteads to the west. Adam organized a posse to patrol the area and protect the isolated farms. The night before he was to leave, he visited Abigail and Henry at their cottage. "I don't want you to go," Henry declared with a child's directness as they sat together after dinner. "What if you get hurt like Papa did?" Adam looked to Abigail, seeing the same fear in her eyes, though she tried to hide it. "I have to go, Henry," he explained gently. "It's my job to protect the people of this town, including you and your mama." Later, after Henry reluctantly went to bed, Abigail stood with Adam on the porch, her arms wrapped tightly around herself despite the shawl covering her shoulders. "I know you have to go," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But Henry's right, I'm afraid. I've already buried one man I loved." Adam took her hands in his. "Abigail, I can't promise that nothing will happen to me. Life doesn't offer those guarantees. But I can promise you this, I have every intention of coming back to you and Henry." He touched her cheek gently. "You've given me something to live for, something to fight for. I won't take unnecessary risks." She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "Then I'll hold you to that promise, Sheriff Keller." Adam kissed her then, a deeper, more passionate kiss than their previous tentative exchanges. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "I love you, Abigail Sutton," he said firmly. "Remember that while I'm gone." For 5 days, Abigail went about her work with a tight knot of anxiety in her stomach. She sewed until her fingers ached, trying to keep her mind occupied. Henry grew quieter, often sitting by the window watching the road into town. On the 6th day, as she was preparing supper, she heard Henry's shout from outside. "Mama! He's back! Sheriff Keller's back!" Abigail rushed to the door to see Adam riding toward their cottage, dusty and tired looking but blessedly whole. Henry was already running to meet him, and Adam dismounted to scoop the boy up in a bear hug that made Henry giggle with delight. When Adam reached the porch, he set Henry down and looked at Abigail with such intensity that her heart skipped a beat. "We caught them," he said simply. "No one was hurt." The relief that flooded through her was so profound that her knees nearly buckled. Instead, she flung her arms around his neck, heedless of the dust and grime of the trail. "Thank God," she whispered against his neck. "Thank God you're safe." That night, after Henry was asleep, Adam took Abigail's hand and led her outside beneath the star-filled sky. The air was crisp with the promise of winter, but neither noticed the cold. "Being out there, tracking those outlaws," Adam began, his voice low and serious. "All I could think about was getting back to you and Henry. I realized something important, Abigail." He drew a deep breath. "I don't want to spend another night away from you if I can help it." From his pocket, he withdrew a simple gold band. "This was my mother's ring. I've carried it with me since the war, a reminder of home." He held it out to her, his hand steady despite the enormity of the moment. "Abigail Sutton, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears spilled down Abigail's cheeks as she nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When she found her voice, it was thick with emotion. "Yes, Adam. Yes, I will marry you." The ring slid perfectly onto her finger, as if it had been made for her all along. Their kiss beneath the stars sealed a promise that neither had expected to make again after the tragedies that had marked their lives. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church that had just been completed in Great Bend. Henry stood proudly beside Adam, while Sarah served as Abigail's maid of honor. Dr. Jenkins gave the bride away, and most of the town attended the celebration afterward. Abigail wore a new dress she had made herself, pale blue with delicate lace trim, and carried wildflowers gathered by Henry that morning. Adam had spent the previous weeks building an addition onto Abigail's cottage, 2 more bedrooms and an expanded kitchen. They moved in together the day after the wedding, Henry excitedly claiming the larger of the new bedrooms as his own. Their first months as a family were filled with adjustments and discoveries. Adam learned to share his space and his life after years of solitude. Abigail discovered that loving again didn't diminish what she had shared with James, but added new dimensions to her heart. Henry thrived under Adam's gentle guidance, finally having a father figure to teach him to fish, ride, and build things with his hands. When winter descended on the Kansas prairie, bringing howling blizzards and bitter cold, they found warmth in their snug cottage and in each other. On the longest nights, they gathered around the fireplace, Adam carving wooden figures for Henry, Abigail working on her sewing, Henry practicing his reading aloud from one of the books Adam had given him. "This is what I dreamed of finding when I headed west," Abigail confessed one such evening as they sat together after Henry had gone to bed. "Not wealth or adventure, but this feeling of home, of belonging." Adam pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "I wasn't even looking anymore," he admitted. "I'd given up on finding this kind of happiness again. Then I heard a boy crying for his mama on the prairie, and everything changed. Spring brought new beginnings to Great Bend. The railroad construction moved steadily closer, promising increased prosperity for the town. Abigail's sewing business expanded to include a small shop on Front Street, where she sold ready-made clothing and took custom orders. Adam continued as sheriff but also started building furniture in his spare time, his pieces becoming sought after for their quality and craftsmanship. In April, Abigail shared a special piece of news with Adam. They walked along the riverbank at sunset, the spring wildflowers painting the prairie in brilliant colors around them. "Henry is going to be a big brother," she told him, watching his face carefully for his reaction. Adam's expression transformed from surprise to wonder to pure joy in the space of seconds. He lifted her off her feet and spun her around, his laughter ringing across the prairie. "A baby," he said in awe when he set her down gently. "Our baby. Due in November," Abigail confirmed, her hands resting on her still flat stomach. "Are you happy?" "Happy doesn't begin to describe it," Adam replied, pulling her into a tender embrace. "I never thought I'd have the chance to be a father." When they told Henry that evening, his reaction was equally enthusiastic. He immediately began making plans for all the things he would teach his little brother or sister, from identifying animal tracks to building the perfect mud fort. The following months were busy ones for the Keller family. Adam worked with other townsmen to build a proper schoolhouse in anticipation of the growing number of children in Great Bend. Abigail prepared for the baby's arrival, sewing tiny garments and transforming a corner of their bedroom into a nursery space. Summer brought its own challenges as tensions flared again between settlers and indigenous tribes displaced by the westward expansion. Adam found himself mediating disputes and trying to prevent violence on both sides. He developed a respectful relationship with Chief Walking Bear of a nearby Kiowa band, working to establish boundaries and respect that could prevent bloodshed. "The land has room for all of us," Adam told a town meeting when some of the more aggressive settlers demanded action against the Kiowa, "but only if we learn to live as neighbors rather than enemies." Not everyone appreciated his balanced approach, and there were nights when Abigail worried as Adam dealt with threats from both sides of the conflict. But his fairness and integrity gradually won respect from most of the community, settler and indigenous alike. As Abigail's pregnancy progressed, she glowed with health and happiness. She continued working in her shop until October, when the increasing size of her belly made standing for long periods uncomfortable. Sarah took over managing the shop while Abigail worked from home, focusing on special orders that could be completed while sitting in her rocking chair. Henry became increasingly protective of his mother, insisting on helping with chores and running errands to town so she could rest. His relationship with Adam deepened as they worked side by side on projects around the house, preparing for the coming winter and the new arrival. One evening in early November, as the first snow dusted the prairie, Abigail felt the initial pains that signaled the baby's imminent arrival. Adam sent Henry to fetch Dr. Jenkins while he helped Abigail to their bed, his hands steady despite his racing heart. "Remember when we met?" Abigail asked between contractions, trying to focus on something other than the pain. "You told Henry the first would move when I heard his voice." Adam smiled, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth. "And you did. You're the strongest woman I've ever known, Abigail Keller." The labor lasted through the night, with Henry sleeping fitfully in his room despite the commotion. As dawn broke over the snow-covered prairie, a new cry joined the household strong and indignant, announcing the arrival of Grace Emily Keller, a perfect baby girl with her mother's green eyes and a dusting of dark hair like her father's. Adam held his daughter with trembling hands, overcome with emotion as he counted her tiny fingers and toes. When Henry was allowed in to meet his sister, his eyes widened with wonder. "She's so small," he whispered, touching her cheek gently. "But she's got good lungs. Just like you did at that age," Abigail said with a tired smile. "You were my strong boy then, and now you're her big brother." As winter settled over Great Bend, the Keller household adjusted to life with a newborn. Adam took on more responsibilities at home to allow Abigail time to recover and care for Grace. He arranged for a deputy to handle routine sheriff duties so he could be present for his family during these precious early days. Henry proved to be an enthusiastic big brother, reading stories to Grace even though she was far too young to understand them, and solemnly explaining the ways of the world to her infant ears. His protective instincts, already strong toward his mother, extended fiercely to his baby sister. Christmas that year was modest but meaningful. Adam crafted a beautiful cradle for Grace and a new set of wooden soldiers for Henry. Abigail sewed warm flannel shirts for both her men and knitted tiny booties and blankets for the baby. They exchanged gifts by the light of candles and the fireplace, the wind howling outside their snug cottage, unable to touch the warmth within. As Grace grew and thrived, so did Great Bend. The railroad arrived in the spring of 1869, bringing increased commerce and new settlers. Abigail's shop expanded, and she hired 2 young women to help with the sewing. Adam's reputation as a fair-minded peacekeeper spread throughout the region, and he was often called upon to mediate disputes in neighboring settlements. By Grace's first birthday, the Keller family had firmly established themselves as respected members of the community. Their home, expanded again to accommodate Adam's growing furniture business, became a gathering place for friends and neighbors. Abigail's talent for creating beautiful, comfortable spaces made everyone feel welcome, while Adam's quiet strength provided a sense of security that extended beyond their own family. On a warm autumn evening, almost exactly 2 years after they had first met, Adam and Abigail sat on their porch watching Henry teach Grace to toddle across the yard. The setting sun painted the prairie gold, and the distant sound of the train whistle carried on the breeze. "Did you ever imagine this?" Abigail asked, leaning against Adam's shoulder. "That day when you found us on the prairie, did you ever imagine we would build this life together?" Adam wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "I couldn't have dreamed it," he admitted. "I was just doing what needed to be done, helping a woman and child in trouble. I had no idea that moment would change everything." Abigail smiled, watching as Henry caught Grace when she stumbled, helping her regain her balance. "Do you remember what you told Henry that day? When he said I couldn't move. I told him you would move when you heard his voice again," Adam recalled. "And I did," Abigail said softly. "But it was more than that. You gave him hope when he was terrified. You gave us both a chance at a new beginning when it seemed like everything was ending." She turned to face him, her eyes shining with emotion. "You saved us in more ways than one, Adam Keller." Adam shook his head, humbled by her words. "You saved me too, Abigail. I was just existing before I found you and Henry. Now I'm truly living." Their kiss was interrupted by Grace's delighted squeal as she managed several wobbly steps on her own, Henry cheering her on with brotherly pride. "Mama!" "Adam, did you see?" Henry called excitedly. "Grace is really walking now." They joined their children in the yard, celebrating the milestone together. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Adam looked at his family, the brave woman who had captured his heart, the boy who had welcomed him as a father, and the baby girl who represented their shared future, and felt a completeness he had once thought forever beyond his reach. "I love you," he whispered to Abigail as they gathered their children to head inside. "All of you, more than I ever thought possible." Abigail's answering smile held all the warmth and promise of the home they had built together. "And we love you, Sheriff Keller, always and forever." 5 years later, Great Bend had grown into a thriving town of over 500 souls. The Keller family had expanded as well, with the addition of twins Samuel and Sarah, born 2 years after Grace. Their home at the edge of town had been transformed into a spacious farmhouse with a large workshop for Adam's furniture business and a separate building for Abigail's dressmaking, which had become one of the most successful enterprises in the county. Henry, now 10, attended the town school and helped Adam with his woodworking in the afternoons. He had his mother's quick mind and his adoptive father's steady hands, showing promise as both a student and a craftsman. Grace, at 6, was her father's shadow, following Adam on his rounds when school wasn't in session and charming everyone she met with her bright smile and curious questions. The 3-year-old twins were bundles of energy who kept Abigail and Adam on their toes from sunrise to sunset. On the 7th anniversary of the day they met, Adam took Abigail back to the spot on the prairie where he had found her and Henry. They rode out early in the morning, leaving the children in Sarah's care, and spread a blanket beneath the same type of cottonwood tree where they had shared their first picnic. "It seems like a lifetime ago," Abigail mused as they looked out over the rolling grassland. "I was so afraid that day, so certain that I had failed Henry, that we would die alone on the prairie. And I was just passing through," Adam added, "heading nowhere in particular, trying to outrun memories that haunted me." He took her hand, his thumb caressing the wedding band that had once belonged to his mother. If I had taken a different trail that day, Abigail squeezed his hand. But you didn't. You were exactly where you needed to be. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching meadowlarks soar above the swaying grasses. Then Adam reached into his saddlebag and withdrew a small wooden box, finely crafted with intricate carvings of prairie flowers. I made this for you, he said, presenting it to her with a shy smile that reminded her of their courtship days. To mark the occasion, Abigail opened the box to find a gold locket inside. When she pressed the tiny clasp, it opened to reveal miniature portraits of their 4 children, Henry's serious expression, Grace's impish smile, and the identical grins of the twins. "Oh, Adam," she breathed, tears welling in her eyes. "It's perfect." He helped her fasten it around her neck, his fingers brushing against her skin in a touch that still sent shivers through her after all these years. "I wanted you to have something to keep them close to your heart," he explained. "Even when they're grown and gone." "They'll never be gone from our hearts," Abigail said softly. "No matter where life takes them." She leaned forward to kiss him, a kiss filled with 7 years of shared joys and sorrows, triumphs and challenges. "Just as you found your way to me on this prairie, they'll always find their way back home." As they rode back to town, side by side in the golden afternoon light, Abigail reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From the desperate young widow struggling to save her son to the confident woman she had become. From the rootless, grieving man Adam had been to the loving husband and father he now was. Their path hadn't always been easy, but every step had led them here, to a life richer and more fulfilling than either could have imagined on that dusty prairie day when a boy cried out for help and a cowboy answered. Great Bend would continue to grow. The children would grow and forge their own paths, and Adam and Abigail would face whatever joys and challenges the future held together, as they had promised, always and forever.